Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you. Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 75. Back in 1814, the White House was burning, and as you can imagine, your favorite immortal may have been around for that. But hundreds of years later, in that very same White House, we shall see the debut of the next Ghost Machine title in the world of the Unnamed, and that's First Ghost. We're talking about all of that today. I'm Nick, and as usual, I'm joined by my better half, Snoggle. How are you, sweetheart? I know you're a little under the weather, but you're powering through.
I'm always feeling good enough to talk about Ghost Machine.
Now, this is our 75th episode. In the world of comic books, that would mean it would behoove us to have, in the very least, a foil cover, perhaps some sort of embossment, or even a hologram if it was the 90s. So we're very happy for everyone who has stuck with us for 75 episodes. We're hoping we can make it to triple digits here in just a couple of more months.
That's very exciting.
It is. And it's flying by.
Mm-hmm.
As usual, we have to start things out with a shout out. And this is to Lost Boy _ comics. That's just the way it sounds. OOSTBOY _ comics. And that's the Instagram handle that you can find him at. Recently, Lost Boy Comics did two, not one, but two extremely cool sketch commissions for our Twitter captain and Blue Sky Admiral, Cameron Gill, out there in the UK. As you know, he posts all of our usual stuff on those platforms to keep the word out. And he has, in the past, commissioned different artists with some really neat ideas for homage covers. This time around, he had Simon Pure sitting there having shot first at, the Han shot first Greedo scene, which is really cool for a Redcoat cover. And then he had a Rook Exodus cover that mirrored the final scene in Revenge of the Sith when Anakin has his new suit on, and he looks up into the sky and says, "Padme, no!" But they were really cool.
That's awesome.
You want to check them out, make sure to go to our Instagram, Ghost Machine Fans, where you'll see a recent collaboration with Lost Boy Comics and Cameron Gill, as well as the Simon Pure account that Cameron Gill also maintains, which recently had a really fun post on Instagram that a lot of people enjoyed. Enough about social media, because Snoggle's back in the newsroom.
So today is Wednesday, September 10th, which is the release day for Redcoat number 14, which we are deep diving into, and the Rockefellers Volume 1 trade paperback. What a perfect opportunity to sit down and reread that first arc.
Yeah, no kidding. I would love to sit down and reread that. I recently sat down and reread Rook Exodus 1 through 6 to get ready for number 7, which was super fun. And I often go back and reread the Unnamed stories for any number of reasons, usually because I'm impatient for the next Ghost Machine thing to come out.
Mm-hmm.
One other bit of news and clarification about our episode schedule. So, Sisterhood, a Hyde Street story, number 3 is awesome. We loved it. It came out last week. Because of our episode schedule, the way that it is and how busy we've been, we were not able to do that issue on the day of its release. And because there is not a new Ghost Machine book coming out a week from today, on the 17th, we are going to do a deep dive into Sisterhood exclusively next week. So if you're chomping at the bit, if you're wondering what the heck happened to Sisterhood, we didn't forget. We loved that title, loved issue 3. And next week, it's going to be all about that.
It's nice when we can just do one comic at a time and give it the stage it deserves.
And so that's exciting. But today we're talking about Redcoat 14. the start of a different tale of Redcoat, it seems, and it also includes the highly anticipated First Ghost Prelude. But before we talk about this issue, we need to run down the 3 fantastic cover options that are available to you should you still need to run out to your local comic book store and pick one of them, if not all of them, up. It's been a little while since we've done a Redcoat joint, and if you recall, we always have these really cool wraparound covers.
Yes, we do. We typically have our favorite Canadian as well.
Yeah, we do miss our Canadian loyalist, typical guest co-host for Redcoat, which is Mr. Michael Schwartz, author of Armored, and Hollywood screenwriter type of dude extraordinaire. He's super busy right now doing lots of fun things in that arena, and we're hoping to have him back one day in the future. But make sure to check out Armored, regardless. Number 6 is out there on the shelves pretty soon.
That's exciting. Mm-hmm. And we miss him.
So as you recall, Snoggle, when we have talked about Redcoat before, there's always a wraparound cover for that A cover.
Oh, yeah.
And this one did not disappoint. You want to tell us about it?
It is so intense. You know, the front, we will see just a battle with the White House on fire. And then the back is, oh my goodness. And the blue light is on the front cover a little bit, alluding to there's something going on the back cover of this. And it is none other than, I believe that is Sara Nash?
Sara Nash, President Sara Nash. And her son, Linus Nash, as far as we know. And I don't believe we know the other characters yet, but we do see like the silhouette of someone in blue energy, like that founding fathers called, blue northerner time travel energy. Everybody's got this same blue energy, and we still don't know, is it magic? Is it tech? Is it both? Is it what? And the front of this cover, though, it's set back in the it's back in the day, and this is when the White House historically was lit on fire, which we'll talk about. But the back cover is very in a separate time period entirely, as far as we know, because we believe that to be present day. And the only reason that we get a hint of this before we even open the book is because on that cover, it literally says First Ghost Prelude, which is pretty awesome.
I think it's super awesome. Love it.
B cover was great. I can't get enough of Kyle Hotz and Dan Brown. That's who did this one. We've been talking a lot about Kyle and Dan lately. This cover to me looks like you've got Simon holding an old school rifle and a more 20th century machine gun type of deal in his other hand. And he's just on a battlefield covered in skeletons, post-apocalyptic, barbed wire, explosions, metal, badness.
I love the smoke on this cover because you can't see skulls in it. It's, but it feels like it's skull smoke. That makes sense.
It does for sure. And just loving every single thing that Kyle Hotz does. I really dig this work for sure.
Same.
Really cool. And that third cover is another one of those super cool character profile study deals.
Yeah, I like that they're doing this.
And that is a Gary Frank joint. So we got Brian Hitch, Kyle Hotz, Gary Frank, some incredible pencilers on this book for the covers. Brad Anderson for the colors for C as well. And so we've got a Junkyard Joe. We've seen a Geiger one of these. We've seen a couple of different ones now. And so it'll be really neat to have all of them. You could line them all up on their side sometime, put them on your wall.
Which I think that might have been their intention.
Well, yeah, and then CGC's got to start making slabs that have the label at the top, or if you turn it on the side, that's a new deal right there.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the 3 covers that are available to you. If you have not already picked up your copy of Redcoat 14 and you're planning on rushing out to your local comic book shop to get yourself a copy so that you can join us today in the conversation about it. And that makes this your official spoiler pause for Redcoat number 14. All right, we're here. You've been warned. You're ready to rock. You've read this issue. Your mind is blown, and we're going to talk about it. Snoggle, can you give us a creator roll call?
Of course I can. Our creators are Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch. The inkers are Andrew Curry and Brian Hitch. Brad Anderson on the colors. And Rob Lee, our king of letters, is back once again.
It's just so consistent, that Rob Lee. Never takes a break. Good. No breaks for Rob Lee.
How does he write like he's running out of time?
So we start our story out, as many Redcoat stories are, with a date. And one thing that we have gotten used to as Redcoat readers is that the dates are not always in chronological order. We've seen the Redcoat in the far future and post-apocalyptia. We've seen him right at Revolutionary War times and everywhere in between. And this particular issue begins in 1814. So this is pretty darn close to the time when he had gotten his powers. And he's at the White House, and it's on fire.
It's on fire.
Why is it on fire, Snoggle?
Someone caught it on fire.
Yeah, and we have our usual, my name is Simon Pure, though I'm anything but, as you'll come to know. And on this blistering night, you'd wager me, the lunatic who set the president's house ablaze. And it's, yeah, I like that because he's assuming that we would assume that he was responsible.
Yes. I love the look on his face as he's running away. And also, my part in this inferno was purely accidental. ... ish.
Yeah, and then we do find out that this is based in real historical events, as all issues of Redcoat have been. And, this is well after 1776, but this reminds us that the conflict continued for quite some time. There were British people who attempted to stop it, and overturn what they had accomplished. And it looks like Admiral George Cockburn, which Simon says it for us. Cockburn lived up to his name, both in attitude and means of destruction. And it's because historically, I guess there was this burning, like they raised York in the UK. Mm-hmm. And so now they're trying to raise Washington in the same way, like RAZE raise. And he's trying to force President Madison's resignation and collapse the centralized resistance to British forces, all to set the stage for the colonies to come crawling back to the king.
He's a man with a plan. He says, "Who's with me?"
And so he does point out, because usually, especially in the early stages before we see him to start to grow a conscience and mature, he does a lot of jobs for people for nefarious purposes, or, he's indifferent about who it's going to affect. And so he points out that he wasn't hired to stop Cockburn, and he hadn't crossed paths with him before, but that he actually had been in the White House because there was a cook who invited him into it.
Yeah. He said he was going to play a poker game with them called Lou.
Oh, that's right, because he says, invited me to the president's house for a game of Lou, which is poker with less bluffing and more betrayal.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so he knew a cook at the White House who he was going to play a poker game with, then was there having dinner as well, and then the whole place went up in flames.
Yeah, ridiculous.
I like that trope, or maybe it's not a trope, trend or thing that happens a lot to Simon, where he's just kind of there at a lot of events. It's not that he's the catalyst.
He was literally just trying to get some dinner for free.
Yep. And play some Lou.
He's like, I heard there be wine. I'm in.
hey, Ghost Machine fans, if you're familiar with the game of Lou as opposed to poker, we would love to hear from you. Shoot us an email. Let us know. That's a new one. I've never heard of that before.
No, I haven't either.
It makes me want to learn about it though because it has more betrayal.
Yeah.
maybe you pick teams and then turn against your teammates like Monopoly.
Like Monopoly.
So that, all this happens, the place is getting ransacked by Brits that are attacking, if I understand correctly, and then he runs into President Madison is not there. That's another really important detail. He's off playing soldier, quote unquote, and Simon runs into his wife, right?
Mm-hmm. He doesn't know it's his wife at first. He just passes by her. And I really love this storytelling here, like through really his reactions in his face from panel to panel. Because she passes by him and she says, "Out of my way, fiend." And it kind of makes his head turn. He's looking and he's like debating with himself from panel to panel. Like, of course she wasn't my concern. It's not my fault she's charging into a labyrinth of flame. And he goes through all of these like, she's about to be burned alive. And then all of a sudden you get the panel where he says, bollocks. Like, gonna go have to save her.
That's significant though, because most comic book creators, storytellers, whatever, aren't going to take the time to have that back and forth because they're using his internal monologue as a way for us to arrive at that decision where he's like, man, I really want to go, but I can't because I can't let that lady just run in there. Because he assumes that she doesn't realize that she's going to the wrong way, that she's a housemaid or something. And he's got to stop her before it gets even worse or she dies. And it's what's really funny is like he grabs her to try to help her, and she's so headstrong that she bats him away with like a fire poker.
She says that she's going to put it through his eye, right?
Yeah. She thinks he's accosting her, I think, because he grabs her by the wrist when they're in this room that's like half inflamed. And she thinks that it's got to do with, I think, all the conflict or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, no, you have to get out of here. And then she says she's trying to save him.
And he's like, he goes through, I love the storytelling here because he's like, is it your son? Is it a dog? Is it this? And she goes, the president. And then there's like somewhat of a, more crashing, more fire. And we look up and what she's talking about is a painting of a president, which of course I see the humor in this where Simon's just like, bloody hell. Really? Woman, you went into a fire for a painting?
And it's the historic painting of George Washington that most of us, I think, have seen in the White House that does exist. He even says that's not the president. It's a painting. She says it's not a painting, the painting. I won't let you torch it like you did the Blue Room. This is another instance where we know they think he did it, which he didn't. And it's important to her because it's an iconic image, but it's not as if she's like, this is valuable. We can't lose it. Take a moment and think about a world without photography and how important that could be. How important it is that generations of people are able to see this portrait of someone because that's the closest that they're going to get to knowing what that person really looked like. And how important it is for people to be able to believe that that person was so significant. Like, that actually makes a lot of sense.
It does. That's why when you destroy something and there's not the electronic archives like we have today, it's a huge deal. You can erase, a country's history or history in general.
Yeah.
Pretty easily.
And as a result of hearing her describe it, he quickly realizes that she's not some housemaid. She's the first lady herself, Mrs. Dolly Madison. And he does say he can't begin to understand why she's doing what she's doing. She's adamant. She's like, I'm not leaving without it. Either help me or go back to Britain. And they make it out though. They literally carry this huge painting out of there. It's really cool.
Yeah, with no hiccups in between, right?
I mean, it seems like they get out of the burning area kind of quickly. I like how I'm assuming Brad chose the color or the sheen of the color on the painting because it's different than the rest of the world. So
that's dope.
Sticks out like painted something. So that's really neat. But this is a funny opportunity for Simon to make some comments about George Washington because he knows a lot more about George Washington than Dolly Madison does.
Oh, yeah, he does. He's like, really? This dude? The bane of my existence?
Well, as far as he knows,
obviously, bless his heart, he will find out more later. But, like, at this point, George Washington is exactly who he thinks he is. He thinks it's George Washington and not Benny.
Well, that's because George Washington really is that, and not Benny. That was just Benny's scheme back then. In 1814, George Washington, I don't know what year he died, but at least in history, presumably he's still around doing his founding fathers cult thing in one way or another.
Good for him.
And then as they're fleeing this place with the priceless, iconic image, they literally run into the actual Cockburn dude and a bunch of his buddies that are drinking because they're happy that they I guess they look like they've won. They feel like they've won.
They're drinking his wine too, which is, I love that Simon's trying to think of an excuse. Like, how am I going to get us out of here without me having to fight these dudes? And, like, what a great thing. Cockburn, like, gives them the end for the lie. Have you been taken prisoner by one of mine? And, she goes, he's not one of yours. And I love Simon being like, bloody hell, woman.
Right.
Why are you causing me so much trouble?
Because she even says, draw your sword and show them. And it's like, okay, lady, we could have just left. Like, we could have gotten the painting out or whatever.
Yeah, she is my prisoner. I'm making her take this out of here.
Yeah, but for whatever reason, I guess it's because he must realize she's the first lady. Cockburn realizes who she is, and he says that she's going to be useful to him, even though the painting isn't. And that makes sense, because if you've got the first lady and you kidnap her, I would think that would give him a lot. But Simon does a number on these dudes. Like, he's rocking and rolling.
Mm-hmm. It probably does. I mean, it probably helps him that they're drunk.
It probably does. He says himself, this may once again appear impressive, but I can assure you it was but some enthusiastic falling on my part. And he's enthusiastically falling to defeat like four armed dudes. And but he does, like you said, he says some of them were overconfident and very drunk, but Cockburn was really good.
Yeah, and I do love that he's like, well, I'm about to die. And she obviously doesn't know if he dies, he comes back, whatever. And she smashes Cockburn over the head with a bottle of wine. We will not be ruled by a crown, bootlicker.
Yeah, us Americans, we just assume like 1776, they signed this document and then all was well, right? Then America was America. We don't think about how like the struggle continued and the conflict continued, and there was this anti-monarchy, real mindset about it that continued for quite some time.
Yeah.
But they do make it out. He defeats all of them, and he would have, it looks to me like he would not have defeated Cockburn if it wasn't for Dolly taking care of that.
I would agree with you, and I love that they're standing there with the painting across the river. This is just a beautiful, beautiful piece of art. Nice splash page they gave us here. and you can kind of feel the somber tone just in the colors.
The page where the White House is burning in the background and Simon and Mrs. Madison are silhouettes.
Mm-hmm.
They are silhouettes indeed. And they make it out, and it's only then that she realizes the gravity of what she's lost. But then they're amongst a bunch of people and like wagons, and it looks like like moving efforts of some kind. And the painting's right in the middle of it. So they made it out. They have a great dialogue, though. And this is another Simon Pure learned from someone significant to make him better moment. Because he's arguing with her that she's crazy. He says she's mad as a box of frogs. And I want to keep that one. You ran into a burning building to save a painting. If that's not madness, I've been misusing the word. And then she says, what do you call running after me and into the fire? You know, we're losing everything tonight. Buildings, books, records. What if that painting's all that's left of what we were trying to build? And he's looking in the past because that's his mindset. He's like, it's a tribute to the past, things that have been lost, things that you can't make better. And she says, it's a compass for the future. And that's kind of a metaphor for Simon's whole deal, right? Because his whole thing is, he looks at himself negatively. Oh, no, I was just falling effectively. Oh, no, I'm just really a good shot because after a while, you just get good at things. Oh, I'll disappoint you just like everybody else. And her thing is, no, whatever is in the future is in the future. I don't care about the past.
I do like the part where she goes, that man lives on, not because he couldn't die. And you know, a part of Simon is like, he is alive. He's immortal. I can't tell you, but he can't die.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if this is before or after the fabled ritual that went awry or whatever that pulled them in there. And for a second, she says, we remember his courage, his restraint, his flaws even. And Simon thinks that she actually knows. And it's like, no, dude. This person wouldn't talk this way about this if she knew that he had magical powers and all that other stuff. That's not what she's saying. But he does easily and poetically shift it to that he's musing about immortality and living forever. And it's really awesome what she says, that immortality isn't about living forever. It's about the impact you make lasting forever. And that's about the best advice Simon can get.
It's about how long people keep telling your story, which after, I think that is a cool line, because later on, skipping ahead a little bit, at the end, someone is telling the story of what happened during this fire and the painting getting out.
And then he bounces right out of their lives, just the way that he usually does. Because she's like, why were you even there? And he's like, I was just trying to get a meal.
I like how nonchalant he is, because he says, Tom, Mrs. Madison.
Right. Well, that's kind of his thing. He's like, I can't get too close to anybody. I always got to move on to the next whatever, even though I'm immortal.
I do think it's crazy, like how we get the one scene where the smoke's still going out. We didn't stop the fire, but I guess we saved something inside it. Most of the buildings continue to burn, ... And then we get the next panel, which is blue lightning hitting these thunder clouds, blue lightning hitting the White House, obviously creating something, because a thunderstorm, air quotes, swept through the city.
Well, and we learn a lot, though. This is very significant. We get the blue light that's just like the time traveling light / the magic light. And Simon says that it's funny, being dead, it didn't change him much, but it made Washington a legend. And that we actually get to see Washington speaking. But Washington says, perhaps if I revealed myself, all this would end. But no, the unknown war, buried beneath the stars and stripes, may still rise. Yet, if Mr. Simon Pure insists on defiling the very blessings I helped conjure, I will be forced to act. God bless America. And I think this is another good example of why it's been implied that Washington is indeed a good guy. Many times it has been implied that he's not a bad guy. We have not actually ever confirmed that Washington is the bad guy. All we ever confirmed was that Benedict Arnold was a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
But John Hancock seemed like a super good guy, and George Washington seemed like a good guy. So we don't know what he's saying here. This is significant. The unknown war buried beneath the stars and stripes may still rise. So he's not revealing himself because even though it could end everything by doing so, he's trying to prevent the unknown war from happening, is what it sounds like. And something he did magically is keeping it at bay.
I have a question for you. The blue light, isn't it during this thunderstorm that stopped the fires? I just assume like progression of the story.
So that means that even though it's happening back then, he's still possibly traveling through time somehow. It makes sense to me, and I like that they would not really paint George Washington to be a bad guy.
I agree, babe.
And then the story, because we know we get something different and special here this time. We get a prelude about something new. The story switches to present day. We see the White House. It looks like it is in good shape. And then we're looking at the picture of George Washington inside the White House, where there's people walking around. Looks like people doing like the tour type of deal. And I just love this because we here's the thing. We only know that this is President Sara Nash if we are Ghost Machine fans, essentially. We've been paying attention. True. We read the bio that was in Ghost Machine #1 back in January of 2024. So we know Sara Nash, Linus Nash, that she's the president. And she's like also like super interesting person. And we get into what was presumably the Oval Office because we know who she is. And she's in there with her son, who we know is named Linus. She asks about a picture of Redcoat and who it's like a painting of Simon on the wall, along with some other paintings. He asks her who it is.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. When Sarah gets pulled away from unexplained events from last night, you should probably see it for yourself. So she turns to her son and says, I shouldn't be long. I'll see you later for dinner. And it's just like a lonely kid in the White House. That's what you always say. Sad.
And so what we're saying is they talk about Simon. She reflects on the same story that we just heard, that Dolly Madison had his help and that she insisted he be painted there, but nobody knows his name. She even alludes to the fact that there's a story that says he was cursed and unable to leave this country until he became what it claimed to be. So it's pretty specific. And the person you're coming in is like some sort of presidential aide or whatever. And she comes in and is like, hey, come talk to us about those unexplained events. And this is probably around the unknown war-ish time. And I would think that whatever those events are leading towards that. But then we do get the sense that Linus is disconnected from mom, right? Because of that one line. That's always what you say, that when she tells him she'll see him for dinner later. So he feels like he doesn't get enough attention from mom because she's the president. And about Redcoat, he does poetically say, maybe he was just a British soldier who grew a conscience.
And then at the end, he says, I like my theory best. And we ended at that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's super cool. And then we do see that the next issue is going to be a new multi-chaptered adventure of great importance that will begin in 1909. And we know that's going to be a tale of loss and pain and some rough stuff for sure. At least that's what we're theorizing based on all the hints that have been dropped and the preview pages that we saw where he was sewing an American flag with his what looked like a family.
It's going to be good. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad that not much more was revealed than this about First Ghost. I'm glad it was just a couple of pages. And I'm glad that the most exciting part about this for me is wondering what the heck is up with George Washington. I feel like the pieces are starting to come together and we're going to have some aha moments very soon.
I totally agree with you. And I mean, if you reveal too much, you got to reveal a little. I mean, it's a fine line, right? You reveal too much, it's like, cool. It's like most of the trailers you watch today for a movie. Sweet. I just saw the whole movie.
So, fantastic issue of the World of the Unnamed. As a reminder, next week we are going to be doing Sisterhood, a Hyde Street story number 3, fully focused on the horrorverse. But before we wrap up today's episode, we have a listener mail that is a little bit different this time. It's about something I don't think you've ever heard about, Snoggle.
So our fantastic mail is from Michael. He says, "Hey, Ghost Machine fans, is Slug and Snipe by Peter Tomasi a Ghost Machine book? If so, what universe will it be a part of? If not, was it scrapped during Mad Ghosts? Thank you for your insight."
So have you ever heard of Slug and Snipe?
Mm-mm.
So it was never released. It was a comic that was advertised before Ghost Machine came out. What Michael is referring to here is Mad Ghost was the original name of Ghost Machine when it was Jeff Johns and Gary Frank had come up with Geiger pretty much, and not a whole lot else. And so Peter Tomasi and Brad Walker, I've talked about Brad Walker before. He's really cool. He's an artist that I really enjoy. They were going to do this book, and they have, like, there's a cover for it out there. There's an advert. You can find it. It says coming 2021. Mad Ghost is the logo. This is 2 years before Ghost Machine was even announced in New York. And the premise is that he's the gun, she's the bullet. And it's like, she's like this tiny little person, and like he shoots her. But it was a kind of like, the name was a reference to Stars and Stripe, which was like a Stargirl thing back in the day. And so I think the answer to Michael's question is nobody seems to know. This question comes up intermittently because people will talk about another one called Blood Tree that came out during the Mad Ghost era that wasn't connected to any other of the other Ghost Machine things. But in this case, it doesn't appear there's been no further solicitations. Yeah, I don't know. It looks really neat. I don't know too much about the premise other than that the guy would shoot the girl, like not shoot her, but shoot, like she's the bullet that he would shoot. Then he's the gun, she's the bullet. That's their thing. It looks really neat. Kind of reminds me of like Spy versus Spy or something like that.
Do you think they changed their mind?
I don't know. What I would hope, there's no new news about it on the interwebs for quite some time, and it's the type of thing where I would have heard about it a good bit. I would think if it was something that we were going to see happening, and really all I can find online is old articles from a couple of years ago, Michael. So sorry to disappoint you, but I will do my best to ask Peter Tomasi and Brad Walker that question for you, and we'll see if we can't get an answer. But thanks for reaching out. If you want to ask us a question, send us a heckle, give us some feedback. We welcome it all at ghostmachinefans@gmail.com. And if you'd like to check out all of our other content, you can do so by going to www.ghostmachinefans.com, where you'll find all of our different social media platforms, as well as our wiki. And you'll be able to get a hold of the login information for the Discord if you stop by our Instagram profile or on Reddit. It's on one of the Ghost Machine Comics Reddit announcement deals on there. So that's a really good place to find that as well. We would love for you to come hang out, join the conversation.
And thanks so much for joining us tonight on the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.
Time Traveling Podcast.